Welcome back, guys, for another edition of In the Wings. Today we're joined by Moji Solaluf-Woju from Utopia Theatre. Hello, Moji. How are you doing?
Hello, both.
We're still in the lockdown. We're still in the lockdown. We're still got smiles on.
Yes.
How are things down in where are you? Are you in Sheffield at the moment, or?
I'm in Sheffield. Yes, I'm in the city of steel.
City of steel. Is it looking steely down there at the moment?
Looking very steely indeed. I love Sheffield.
So as our viewers probably might know, and if you don't know, if you're joining for the first time, In the Wings is all about us putting a spotlight on an artist or a company that we think deserves more recognition, that we think is doing great work and is not being enjoyed to the fullest capacity. We think these companies and these artists should be known throughout the whole of the UK, and we think Utopia Theatre is definitely one of those companies with what you're trying to do. So we're going to get into a little bit of all of that. So I guess really the first thing I want to ask is a little bit about Utopia Theatre. Like, what inspired you to set up that company? When was it set up? You know, take us through that. Take us through those sort of early moments of the formation of Utopia.
Okay. How long have you got? Anyway, how long have you got? So, Utopia Theatre itself is my second career, if I just kind of put that out there first. So Utopia Theatre was set up when I went to drama school as a matured student, just following my dream. I've always had the dream to be in theatre. And I never had the opportunity when I was younger. So I thought, well, actually, now that I'm kind of in a place where my children had left home, I could just do what I want to do. So I went to drama school. And when I finished, there was a lot of, I would say I was surrounded by kind of a lot of negativity about the industry in terms of being a woman, being a Black woman, and that really that the industry is a very closed industry and one where there aren't a lot of opportunities for people of color. And also I was made aware that the competition is grave in terms of you wanting to be a director in the industry, especially if you're not white, if you're not male, if you haven't gone to certain schools or certain universities. So what I decided to do was just take my own life into my hands, really, and set up a theatre company. But around all of that kind of negativity, I was lucky that at university, York St. John University, a lot of the lecturers there were lecturers who practiced theatre. So they gave us an insight into things like how to apply for Arts Council funding, how to set up your own theatre company. And they also said that actually you didn't need anything to set up a theatre company. So that in itself I was amazed by that actually all you need is just get a few people together that feel strongly or passionate about theatre in the way that you're passionate about it, and that you could get something going. And that's exactly what I did, which was just a few people that we were at drama school together. I picked a play and I said, would you like to go on this journey with me? I had a bit of savings of what is left over from my student loan. And we got people together and we did the first play. And from then on, that was how the company was. The company was formed off of the back of that play.
And what year are we talking? When
that was 2012. Okay, 2012, yes. But the company itself was not fully registered until 2015. So I kind of worked on that, working within the community, working with people that I know for the duration of those 3 years until I then decided, I would make this formally into a legal entity.
Yeah, no, that's a very similar timeline to Tribe Arts as well, actually. We started around 2013, 2012 as well, and actually launched in 2015. So it does take a long, long time. And then I guess it's taken another further 5 years to get to where you are. So in terms of Utopia, because it's when I first heard about it, I thought it's a very unique concept because you are completely dedicated and focused around the African diaspora, which I suppose a few decades ago was a very vogue thing for every community to talk about their own people and their own issues and their own experiences. And then we had this advent of political correctness and this whole idea of inclusion and diversity. And then it suddenly became very unfashionable to have a particular focus. You now need to include everybody and everybody has to be involved. But you've kind of stuck to focusing your stories and your company around the African diaspora and defining itself distinctly from Black work, which is really influenced by Caribbean culture and the West Indian sort of culture in the UK. But in return, it offers obviously great opportunities for people of the African descent. So how difficult has it been to get these African stories on stages, especially in the North, and where many of the stories are sort of marginalised by the communities and are still quite rare on our stages, actually? So so how has that journey been to do what you want to do, stay true to what you want to do, but particularly how has it been doing that in the North compared to maybe work that you've done down in London or elsewhere?
I think I would say that the main difficulty in the North is trying to sell it. I know that even when I first started out, the few conversations I've had, the main question has always been around who are your audiences? What are your audiences? Almost as though people have this notion that because you're doing a certain type of work and telling a certain type of story, suddenly it's only a certain type of people that come to it. And it just baffles me that we all travel now all around the world to go and engage with different cultures. Yet somebody would be running a building and thinking that if somebody says that they're making a piece of theatre that tells the story of somebody or some people from a particular community, that means that it's only people from that community that are going to come to the theatre, that somebody that is white and British is not interested. They're interested in buying the book. Why would they not be interested in coming to the theatre too? You see what I mean? People would go to the shops and buy a Wole Soyinka novel or a play text. Why would they not come to the theatre to watch a Wole Soyinka play? Why would they not want to engage with those kind of stories? So those are the kind of like mini challenges. But I think a lot of it also has to do with, I think we have to take responsibility also for how we sell what we're selling. I think you must never say because people are going to have a certain attitude about what you're bringing to them, you must never let that allow you to, what word am I looking for, to kind of minimize or doubt the work that you're making. You have to keep making that work and sell it as authentically as you can sell. And that's what I've done. I've just kind of remained true to myself, remained true to who I am, and remained true to the work that I want to make. And the idea would be that they'll continue to see the work, and then they would have to be the ones that would have to come around to it.
So two questions just from what you're mentioning as you're talking. There's a few things. I mean, the challenges of your company, I'm sure, are represented by every other Black Nation theatre company in the UK. The experiences that you've just talked about completely resonate with some of the experiences we've had. For instance, the whole idea of segmentation of audiences, where certain work is made for certain people. We did work. We launched a show called Tribe Talks back in 2015, which was all about the empire and trying to understand British identity and multiculturalism. And we actually physically, you won't believe, got calls up by white people who said, is this show for me? Can I come and see this show? And that was astounding to me, because it was like, a Black and Asian person calling Sheffield theatres and saying, "Hey, can I come and see Oliver Twist? Is that all right? Is it for me?"
Yeah.
Do you know? But we've obviously been conditioned to be part of those stories, but it's not really worked the other way around. So integration in that sense hasn't fully happened from their side because they're still away from our work. So the question was, in terms of audiences, like this whole idea of when you've talked, when you are asked questions about who are your audiences, what are your audiences, all that kind of stuff. And the idea of, that juxtaposition as a company where you have to be inclusive and include everybody, but then have to be very specific about the audience that you're trying to reach with a particular type of work. There seem to be two ends of the same conversation, and how do you get around that? Because that's, I think, is one of the challenges for a lot of Black and Asian companies, is to be inclusive and to get the money and to play the game and to be in the system in that sense, but then at the same time be true to a certain audience that actually might marginalize white voices, not marginalize, but might not include those voices, but not necessarily that being a bad thing.
I think it's about. I think it still has to be about the work. So the type of work that I make, I don't set out to say this is who it's for. I say I am telling this story. This is the story. So the story that we're telling at the moment of a show that is going to open next month, for example, is a show about 3 generations of Nigerian women. These women, because of how the whole thing that you talked about empire, because of colonialism, our lives come bang on face with the history of this country. So every time, most of the time that we're telling a story, of our story, we're actually telling a story of this country as well. Exactly. We're telling a story of the Western world and how it's impacted us, how it's come into our world and disrupted it, because that's what's happened. That's why I'm here. That's probably why
they're here. Yeah.
The origin of why you're here. Because I wouldn't be here if somebody hadn't gone to Nigeria to go and take people as slaves and bring them down here, or whichever way. You see what I mean? Western education wouldn't come to Nigeria for me to even come here to come and study, for my parents to come and study here, for my parents to be born here.
Yeah, we're here because you was there, is the famous line, isn't it?
Yeah. Exactly.
And just in terms of like that whole thing about making that work that is being true and authentic to what you're trying to say, how have you negotiated that whole thing about stereotype? We've had it quite a few times where, when you're trying to sell a piece of work to a white facing audience, or, where you're trying to get a bit of resources to lift it off the ground. And there seems to be a connection between authentic and stereotype in the minds of non-people of color. Have you come across that kind of difficulty?
I mean, I've had people frown whenever I use the word authentic, but I know what it means to me. Authentic means I'm telling that story from from a source that I can identify with. I'm not telling it from anybody else's perspective, and I'm not telling it from somebody else's lens. I'm telling it from my own lens. So I don't see how that can be diluted, because as an artist, your work and your identity and where you're coming from, all of them are all intermingled.
And do you feel sticking to that authenticity that you were talking about has made it a little bit harder for you to approach certain venues or to get certain people on board because you're sticking to your guns, you want to stick to that authenticity? Has that kind of almost caused a blockage from people who might want to program the work because you're not shifting on the story that you want to tell? You're
not compromising. Yeah.
I mean, I haven't had that experience. I haven't had that experience because I've just always gone to just sell the work. And I think what a lot of people have said is, I mean, one of the things that people have said to me is that you talk so passionately about it sometimes that we just can't say no.
Mm.
And I think it's got to be about, I think if you believe in that thing, I think there's a way you talk about it that kind of gets rid of the doubters, really, or just minimizes the impact of the doubters. Because, yeah, I can see sometimes even I can see that some of the people wanting to program the work have their doubts. But then the other way that I compensate for that is I do a kind of research and development, and I do a sharing off of the back of that. And I get the doubters to come and see that.
Yeah.
Because there's one thing if you see a play on paper and somebody is saying this is it, this is the kind of audiences, I'm sure it's something that a diverse audience can relate to, it would resonate with everybody. And you're thinking, but it's 3 Nigerian women. I don't think these people would come and see it. I don't think. But then you do a workshop production, for example, and the place is full. And all these people that you think are not going to be there, well, that they think that are not going to be there are there, then they can see for themselves. So maybe that is part of the way that we have overcome that. And maybe that's why I don't have experience of it, because I don't have experience of that kind of thinking behind the work, because we've always had a shop window to display the work and for them to see firsthand, these are the type of audiences that are there.
And have you ever, like, and I totally get the point that you're making, because we've tried to do the same thing ourselves, and I'm sure a lot of Black and Asian artists are heavily reliant on R&Ds to be able to try and get their vision across to continue their work. I think in terms of some of that, I mean, because some of the scale of Utopia's work has been quite grand. Like, you know, the South Africa Festival that you curated, you know, these were big projects where you were incorporating quite a few different voices. And has that ever been a hindrance? Has your vision, has your ambition, has your Black ambition ever been halted? Has it ever terrified? Have you ever got the feeling that it's terrified? You know, it's great to have an African show on, or a Black show on, but has your I think I'm just repeating myself, but what I'm trying to say is, has it ever been stalled or halted, or have you ever thought that that's the reason why some of your work has not been put on, because you've been too ambitious?
All the time. All the time, the word I hear is, "This is so ambitious. Yes. This is so ambitious."
And that's what right?
I hear it so much. I've decided to just dismiss it. I've even heard it from the Arts Council. Even the Arts Council tell me, "Oh my God!"
I think it was coined by the Arts Council, actually. It might have been, yeah. I think we've only ever heard it from there. So earlier this year, Utopia secured a pot of money from the ACES, from Arts Council England's Elevate Fund. How vital was that to get your organisation to where it is, and how has that helped during lockdown, and how have you survived during lockdown?
Well, I mean, that funding has been really useful in allowing us to engage staff. It's paid myself a salary and allowed me to not have to do the running up and down that freelancers do, of having to go and find other work to supplement your income. It also meant that we've had the opportunity to develop the board, bring 2 new board members on board, start training the board, assessing their skills and giving them all the necessary skills to be able to support the organization for the next few years. But most importantly, it's the staff who are now going to work towards drafting a business plan, looking at our funding strategy, and just really putting the organization in a place where it becomes sustainable, and with or without Arts Council funding, really.
No, that's fantastic. And that would be obviously a stepping stone for a lot of organizations out there. And just generally in sort of the lockdown period, I mean, it's obviously you've got the funding, but then the lockdowns happened, which I suppose has probably helped to give you a little bit of stability. But how, maybe artistically and how, personally, and just from an organizational perspective, what kind of impact has lockdown actually had on Utopia?
I mean, the lockdown for us has been a blessing in disguise, really, because firstly, it's allowed us some breathing space to think about where the organization is, where the organization needs to be, where it was, who are the players that we want to kind of work with in the future. So we've really just kind of had a downtime to assess everything we're doing, and then to put some focus into planning, because a lot of the time, smaller organizations, we're just so busy chasing our tail that we're trying to chase this person to program this work, program that work. We don't really have time to kind of really do like a kind of 5-year plan. So now we have like a 3-year plan in place. We have consultants that we're going to bring on board to help us with fundraising so that we can just have that momentum of planning forward. We were lucky as well with the lockdown, that because of the emergency COVID funding that the Arts Council announced, we applied for that in order to continue to engage with some of our audiences online, because our show at the Crucible, Here's What She Said to Me, was postponed indefinitely. And we got that funding as well, which has allowed us to create an initiative online, which you're probably aware of, the Creative Hub. And that in itself has just been a really useful tool to find a way to bring our community together, to bring people together, to exchange ideas, to exchange knowledge. And also with everything that was going on with Black Lives Matter, it was just really creating a safe space where people can come together, support each other, learn from each other. So there were courses being delivered in acting, directing, movement. We had conversations with leading artists within the industry. And a lot of people commented on how that is the first time they've ever had an initiative like that, where people have had a safe space like that to come together and really openly teach each other, but also learn from each other, but also a space where they can have truthful, honest conversations.
And in the relatively short time that Utopia has been going, what are you most proud of?
I'm proud of everything that we're doing. I can't really pick one. I'm proud that we haven't shied away from telling stories that are important. I'm proud that we haven't allowed a number of the things that you've mentioned to kind of like put us off what we're doing. Because I knew when I started this organization that there's just a gap in the market, that there's, and that it needed somebody to come in there and kind of fill that gap in a very brave way. And just kind of just tell those stories without shying away from them. So I can't pick one thing in particular.
Would you say there's one particular story that's really resonated with you that you put on stage through Utopia, something that was, meant a lot to you personally or culturally? Is there something that was very specific to you that you'd say that was your proudest moment when that was on stage?
Well, I think the one thing that meant a lot to me, that was my proudest moment on stage, be it that it's not a fully realized production, is it's a production that we did in Sheffield called How Far Apart. And How Far Apart really tells the story of the kind of discrimination that a lot of people of color face within the NHS and just within the health generally in this country. And that story itself was inspired by an experience that I had when my daughter was giving birth, where we just received the most appalling treatment that almost led to the to very horrific circumstances, but we were lucky that it didn't get that far. And then as I started to investigate this, I realized actually that there were statistics that showed that Black and minority women are at a very high risk of death during childbirth in comparison to their white counterparts. And then we started to investigate what that was about, and did a piece about that. So that is something actually that we're still developing, we're still working on it. And it's, for me, I think that is part of why we need to be doing the type of work that we're doing, because theatre can be a very useful tool as well to just point the light at some areas that people don't really want us to talk about and people don't want to talk about. And as much as it's not nice to talk about them to some people, it's really important for our community that people are aware. We need to be aware, because again, if I was aware when I'm going into those hospitals, I would know, I would have that kind of mindset to question things a bit more. A lot of it as well is also about knowledge. If you're aware, then if you're aware of something, then you know how to deal with it.
Yeah.
So it's that kind of awareness as well that we want to create around some issues that may well affect people within our community.
And would you say that Utopia, the weight of the focus of Utopia stories is more on the sort of African perspective or the British African perspective, or are you, or is it a mix of both?
It's a bit of both. It's a bit of both, really. And for me, the focus is one of the challenge that we have at Utopia Theatre, and that we're trying to face head on as well, is this focus is not about just one part of Africa. And because Africa is such a huge continent, we're being mindful to try to make sure that we're not saying that we're telling stories of Africans. What we're doing is trying to touch different places in Africa, including engaging with different Africans that are in the diaspora. And at the moment, and which is why we did the Spirit of Africa Festival, actually, to address that same issue, that actually sometimes some people, when they hear Africans, they think just Black people. Meanwhile, Africans are not just Black people. We all know that there were lots of Asians that lived in Kenya, that were born and brought up in Kenya. We all know that there are different parts of the world where actually there are people of Indian heritage who are Africans, for example, in places like Madagascar and all of these other parts of Africa. So we're trying to dispel some of those stereotypes as well, and trying to find a way to start. Our mission in the next few years is to start visiting different parts of Africa, actually, and finding stories from there, stories by well-known writers that we can use to showcase, so that people can see, so that when they see these people on stage, they'll be like, oh, I thought they said this is African theatre. And we'll say, yes, it is African theatre, actually. Yes, the person may not be Black, but actually, it is African theatre. Egypt is Africa, you know. So,
well, some people try and argue it's Middle East, but it's not Middle East. It's definitely Africa.
Yes, but so that is, I think that is the challenge also that we kind of need to just address in the next few years. Shed some.
Yeah, so I mean, going back to our sort of question of when the Arts Council asked you who's your audience, I mean, it's like, well, how long have you got? Because I'm talking about African, culture and African histories, and it's not called Cradle of Civilization for no reason.
No.
You know, when you start focusing on West Africa, for instance, you know, you have that whole diaspora that's now been known as the Caribbean, culture, and the Afro-Caribbeans and all that kind of stuff has originated from there, and obviously that's part of the diaspora, that's part of the African diaspora. And so, there's no way you can answer that question, is there really?
No. And that's why I kind of write one whole long ass thing about it, because I'm like, where do you start? Everybody.
Yeah. And actually, just on the back of that question, I mean, obviously there some might say that there is a disconnect between the African and the Caribbean cultures in terms of how the Caribbeans might identify as African, yeah. And how, I mean, I know that's not your focus in terms of the stories that you're trying to tell, but obviously it would seep into it at some point, depending on the diaspora, the diasporic story that you're talking about. But is that a challenge as well that Utopia wants to address, or tries to address, or tries to bring in terms of its audience development?
It is. And in fact, it was a huge challenge of the Creative Hub, because I would have people of Afro-Caribbean origin that I would approach, and they kind of questioned why I'm approaching them to come and be part of this thing. And I would have to re-educate people and say, by the way, you are of African origin. And you are entitled to be at this table. So that is a bit of a challenge that we need to address, just the same way that I think we all kind of need to educate ourselves really a little bit about our history as well.
Yeah. I think all Black Nation companies, all British Black Nation theatre companies and artists, you know, we've got it's unfortunately become one of our job descriptions to be to educate the nation when it comes to those things, and actually sometimes our own people as well. You mentioned that there's been a heavy Asian presence and Indian presence in Africa from a long time, and actually vice versa. There's been an African presence in India for a long time, with the Andaman connection and beyond. But just given on the back of that, now that we're in this sort of post-lockdown, or you know, this lockdown period, how do you think Black and Asian artists will come together to heal? You know, after this period, I mean, the theatre sector is obviously has been impacted a lot by COVID. Our communities on top of that are the most susceptible, and then our work that we make within the sector is probably going to be triple impacted, because there's conversations going on right now about how we're going to build back our industry. You know, are we going to go back to the same old way that it was, where it's always been a struggle to get Black and Asian work off the ground? Or are we going to have a new type of industry, a new type of sector where diversity is at its heart, and you know, there's opportunities and there's spaces for Black and Asian artists to heal, to talk, to be removed from the white gaze? How do you envision that, the other side of lockdown for Black and Asian artists?
I think the way I kind of envision it is that we need to find more and more platforms to come together. One of the things I noticed during the lockdown is how easy people manage to set things up via Zoom, and people that you would never ordinarily meet or hear about are all coming together. And I just wondered, I remember in one of those meetings, I posed the question of why has it taken something like COVID-19 for people to even be able to come together in this way? Why haven't we thought before that actually it's only by a collective of us and a unity in our voices that we can achieve some of the things that we want to achieve? Because when you think about it, how many buildings are owned by us?
None. I think the number is a big fat zero, isn't it?
Yeah. So that in itself is kind of where I see people. I mean, people would have shops where 10, 15, 20 people will walk into that shop. They will have their own little corner. They make their own money and they go. But as intelligent as we are and as exposed as we are in this industry, 100 of us can come together and say, actually, let's put all our £1,000 together and get that building, and let's have a timetable where you use it for 1 week, I use it for 1 week. You see what I mean? It's like simple things that we can do without blaming the white man for everything. Sometimes just maybe us ourselves just taking responsibility for some things.
Yeah, that's a good, strong message. And so obviously new platforms is what Moji's saying. And I'm sure at Utopia is one such company that's offering that. And actually off stage, I think we should plug ourselves a little bit there. So just finally, just to round off how this conversation we're having, you've mentioned the word together quite a lot. And Sheffield Theatres has just announced its Together season that it's going to be doing. I think you've also mentioned that your show, Here's What She Said to Me, is going to be programmed as part of that, and I think it's going to be coming on. But just tell us a bit what is next for Utopia. Tell us a bit more about the show. Tell us a bit, if you could give us any exclusives of what you guys are thinking about.
Exclusives, yeah.
Where can people see your work, and how can people engage with you right now and in the next couple of months?
Okay, so Here's What She Said to Me, like I said earlier, is a story of 3 generations of Nigerian women. And it tells the story of a woman way back in the 60s up to the generation that is in the present day. So as in present British Nigerian. So you can see how a story like that allows us to kind of explore the past, what's gone on in the middle, and also what is now going on presently. It's full of music, it's full of singing, it's just a vibrant piece of real storytelling. And if you're a theatre buff, as in if you're somebody that really loves theatre, none of all this fancy stuff that is done with lighting and fanciful sets. I'm talking about real, raw storytelling, people physically giving you their all to tell you a story, which is what most of us grew up with. Even when you're young, when somebody's telling you a story, they just tell you that story. If you're the kind of person that loves that type of storytelling, then this show is for you. This show was meant to happen in the studio at Sheffield Crucible. It's now happening in their main stage, and we're the first show to open that Together season. And we feel that as part of our drive to show this industry what we're capable of, we all need to support each other. And basically, I would like people to follow us on Twitter, follow us on social media, go to our website and just book tickets and come and support us. Sheffield Theatres have already done, Sheffield Theatres have already done the snooker. So they've tested out safety conditions. I know everybody's concerned about safety, but I mean, I wouldn't go there and make a show if it's not safe. So I can assure people that they would make sure that it would be safe for people. And it opens on the 30th of October, and we're there for 2 weeks. Most of the shows start at 7:45 in the evening. So yeah, it should be a great time. It's just 3 women on stage, on that big, massive Crucible stage, telling a story.
That's great, and I'm glad that there's something being programmed in the flesh for us to go see. Don't worry, we'll put everything on the bottom of the screen for people to click on and find out. And I think we would love to come down and see it as well. Maybe we'll have a review of it for the next issue.
Thank you. Yes, we'll look forward to seeing you.
Who knows? But Moji Sola Alafoju, thank you so much for your time and for telling us about your experiences and giving us access to an insight into Utopia and what you guys are all about. And I hope to see a lot more from your company and we really, really hope that we come out of this lockdown and there's a big show to look forward to when we do. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Tribe Arts, and keep doing all the good work that you're doing. Thank you so much.